Nikon have released two new Z-mount DX lenses. We have the new 35mm f1.7 and we also have the new 16-50 f2.8. But these aren't just any normal DX lenses. This 35mm f1.7 is also a macro lens, and this 16-50 f2.8 is a 2.8 all the way through. So no matter where you are in the focal length range, you're always going to be able to shoot at f2.8. So let's dive into both of these lenses in a bit more detail and find out if they're right for you. They're going to be great for people who are already using the Z30, the ZFC, the Z50, and like I've got here, the Z50 II. The first of the two lenses, we have the DX 35mm f1.7. And the really interesting thing about this 35mm 1.7 is it's also a macro lens. So as a 35mm f1.7, it's fantastic for things like portraiture, events, and taking shots of family and friends, and also gives you that really nice blurry background effect because of that f1.7 aperture. The 35mm focal length on a DX lens means that you have the equivalent field of view as a 50mm focal length on a full frame lens. So this is a fantastic focal length for portraiture and those events, time with family and friends and travel and so on. Now, when it comes to that macro capability, it also allows you to use this lens much closer to your subject and really brings out detail that you can find in anything as you're out and about traveling, or you might be wanting to take specific shots of things like jewelry, flowers, and in this instance here, mushrooms. So this is a really good lens to consider and covers such a wide range of different options. If you're after a lens that's lightweight and small, but also gives you a very fast and bright f1.7 aperture, the 35mm macro could be a lens to consider. And one other thing that makes this lens just way more usable than some of the other macro lenses that are available in the Z-mount range, we have the 50mm f2.8 and the 105mm f2.8. When you compare this directly against the 50mm 2.8, the 50mm extends its barrel when it focuses, whereas this 35mm 1.7 focuses all internally, meaning you don't have any extending elements when focusing very close to a subject in front of you. And to show you the differences of that, I have got a 50mm macro f2.8 here, and you can see that side by side, this is the front barrel on the 50mm that extends when you're using it very close to a close-up subject. And when you're using it as like a normal 50mm lens, that barrel will then retract as you're focusing, but that barrel does move, and that can be distracting or can get in the way if you're trying to focus very close to something that's right in front of you. When you are making use of that macro capability, this 35mm 1.7 has the closest focusing distance of 16 centimeters. As I'm out and about shooting with this lens today, you might see that I'm using this lens closer than 16 centimeters to a subject that's right in front of the lens. And you have to keep in mind that that 16 centimeters is measured directly from the sensor. So the focusing distance of 16 centimeters from the back of the lens very much to where your subject is in front of that lens. When it comes to the outside design of this 35mm, there are no switches or controls on the outside of the lens. The vast majority of those things will be controlled in the camera, mainly stuff like autofocus. And there's also only one major dial, so you have one major focusing ring, but that can also be customized in the camera as well. Because of that focal length and the closest focusing distance, this 35mm macro can give you a reproduction ratio of 0.67 times, meaning it's going to be really easy to fill the frame with very small objects that you are really close to. This lens hasn't just been made with stills in mind, but also with video. It makes use of silent stepping motors for focusing, meaning that you can still use this lens when focusing automatically and recording using internal microphones or a microphone that's set on the top of the camera body without picking up the noise from the focusing motors, and also has focus breathing reduced as well. For a macro lens, it has a very minimal amount of focus breathing, which is not only really useful for video, but also really useful for focus stacking as well. This 35mm also uses a 9-bladed aperture diaphragm, which means even when using the lens top down, it's still going to give you really nice round bokeh. Despite being such a small and lightweight lens, it is still a weather sealed lens and also has a metal mount on the base of the lens as well. So still a really nice built lens despite being incredibly lightweight and nice and compact. There's also an optional lens hood for this lens which you can make use of if you want to. That will simply screw into the front thread of the lens. That's worth mentioning, it's a 52mm thread, and if you're interested in that lens hood, it has a product name of a HN43. When it comes to the weight of this 35mm f1.7, it only weighs 220 grams. And when combined with the Z52 like I have here, the total weight of that body and the lens would be 770 grams, giving you a really nice lightweight but yet really feature-rich setup. When it comes to the 16-50 f2.8, this is a really interesting lens, especially for DX shooters, because it's the first Z-mount DX lens that has a constant aperture when you're zooming in and out. There's lots of Z lenses that cover this focal length, but they have a variable aperture and won't let you shoot at f2.8 all the way through. So if you are already using your DX Z-mount camera, either a Z30, a ZFC, or a Z50 or a Z52 like I've got here, then this lens is definitely worth considering if you wanted a bit more of a higher quality lens, or if you wanted a lens to use in low light situations but still have the flexibility of a zoom. When it comes to the 16mm to 50mm focal length, this gives you effectively the equivalent of a 24 to 75mm lens. So if you're used to using maybe a DX camera body as a backup to a full frame camera body, this is also a great lens to consider if your full frame camera body has a 24 to 70 f2.8 attached to the front of it as well. In terms of the design of the lens, there's no switches or controls on the outside of the lens for focusing or anything like that. You control that from inside the body. The controls you have on the outside are your zoom ring, which allows you to zoom from 16 to 50, and as you can see, this lens also extends whilst you're zooming as well. It's not an internal zoom like the new 24 to 70 is for the full frame cameras. You also have this function ring at the back of the lens as well, which can be customized depending on what you want to use it for. The filter thread at the front of this lens is a 67mm filter thread, and there is a lens hood that comes with this lens in the box. When it comes to this lens's closest focusing distance, it's actually incredibly impressive. When you're using this lens at its widest angle of 16mm, you have a 15cm closest focusing distance. And as you zoom the lens into 50, that closest focusing distance will change to 25cm, allowing you to get in really close and still get detailed shots, despite this not being a dedicated macro lens. Because I'm shooting this lens alongside the 35mm macro, that 35mm does allow you to have a greater reproduction ratio and makes objects larger in the frame, but this lens is still going to be great for getting in close and working with really good, sharp details. As you can see, as I've got the lens mounted on a Z52 here, it works really nicely with that Z52. It's not front heavy, it's really nicely balanced. The lens itself only weighs 330 grams. This lens hasn't just been designed with stills in mind, it's also been designed with video in mind as well. Having a full silent autofocusing system inside the lens, also having clickless dials so they don't make any noise when you're using them, and it also has minimal focus breathing as well. So it is a really useful lens not only for stills, but also for video. And it might also be worth considering this lens as a DX lens for some of the full frame cameras that shoot DX in their video mode. So especially if you have a Z6 III or a Nikon ZR, and when you're shooting 4K 120, that applies a DX crop. But if you still want that 24 to 70 focal length, this could be a lens to consider if you use those cameras shooting 4K 120 a lot. This 16 to 50 2.8 is also a VR lens. It has built-in VR vibration reduction in the lens, and that can give you 5 stops of image stabilization. You can also use this lens with the full frame bodies that have in-body stabilization and support synchro VR, and that will give you up to 5.5 stops of stabilization in the center and also in the edges of the frame as well. That f2.8 aperture is supported by a 9-bladed diaphragm, which means that if you are going to use this lens slightly stopped down, you'll still get nicer, rounder bokeh in the background. And shooting obviously at f2.8 is going to give you really nice control over your depth of field and bokeh anyway. It's also worth mentioning that this lens also has a metal mount, so despite that lightweight, it is a really nicely built, robust lens to use when you're out and about in nature like this. When using this 16 to 50 on a Z52 like I am here, this is a really nice high quality setup, but the lens and body weight has a total weight of 880 grams. I've been shooting with these two new Z-mount DX lenses over the past couple of days now, and I've been really impressed with how both of them have been working. The 35mm f1.7 and the 16-50 f2.8 actually complement each other quite well. You get the benefit of the shallow depth of field with the f1.7, you get the flexibility of the 16-50 from the zoom lens, and actually both of them I think could find a situation in your camera bag. So when it comes to using these lenses, I found that the focus has been fast and accurate on both of them. Image quality has been great and outstanding. I particularly like the image quality out of the 16-50 when it comes to using it as a zoom lens, being able to zoom from that wide to that narrow and controlling your composition. And also the image quality of this 35mm macro is fantastic when you're close up and using it for detailed subjects like these mushrooms we have right here. So between these two, if you're already a DX user, you've got a Z30, a ZFC, a Z50. These are definitely lenses you can consider and add to your camera bag in the future.